You're listening to Rio Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out RioRadio.com.
Logic is the slowest part of the human brain. Emotion is the second fastest and primal is the fastest. So what happens in most people in real estate, they start off like this and then they quickly go like this. We call it flipping the lid. And they're just bouncing between emotional and primal. And my job as a coach is to come in and get that logic back on and assess marriage, assess how they're behaving, assess their nutrition, assess how they're doing business. And so for most people, they keep walking around with their lid flipped, hoping that something's going to work.
Welcome to Rio Radio, episode 228 with Andrew Devlin.
Wow.
Crowd goes wild.
Ted gives very enthusiastic intros. So you're welcome, or sorry about that, whichever way you want to take that. So I want to clear up a point of contention here with Ted. I was under the impression that you were from Australia, but my cyber sleuthing production team discovered that is not the case.
You'd really call me out on this one.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's Ireland, right? You're from northern UK. No, that's wrong too.
Northern UK. So I'm gonna let everybody know there is England, and then there is Scotland, and then there's Wales, and that is Britain.
Got it.
Scottish and Welsh would not say they are British, but the English sometimes do say they're English, even though they are not. They are English. So I am from northern England in a town called Barrow-in-Furness, where we build nuclear submarines for fun.
Whoa. Okay. That is interesting.
Okay. The big question is, how did you get into the States? Because I don't think I've ever heard that answer.
So
on a submarine, obviously, Ted.
The submarine, yes. We do. It's only nuclear now, 2 football fields long. And I think 6 nuclear warheads per sub. So they're mighty. But so long story short, I had a massive accident when I was 8. And I spent about 4 years relearning how to walk again.
Ooh.
And, so my legs give way. Needless to say, I missed a lot of school. And I'm really, really dyslexic. And so by the time I got into high school, I had no clue what anybody was talking about. So I got into windsurfing, of course, in England. And it is as cold as it sounds.
Yeah.
But that rebuilt my body. And I remember careers day in school, they said, hey, so what do you want to be? And I said, well, I don't want to wear shoes. And I want to be a windsurf instructor. And I remember the careers advisor laughed and said, that's not a real job. If you like water so much, why don't you become a plumber? Because when you're born into a town that builds nuclear submarines, everybody goes into the shipyard. We had 26,000 employees at the shipyard when I was a kid. And we're just taught to go into the shipyard. And I didn't want to. And so I became a windsurf instructor. And I lived in Wales and France and Spain. I worked on old tall ships in the Canary Islands. And then I got a good paying windsurfing job in England. And then I was a personal trainer in the evenings. And then I was on a windsurf board. It was June in England and it started snowing. And I asked this question, can you do this till you retire? No, it was that fast. Can you live in a wetsuit every day for the rest of your life? No. And I said, so what do you like? I said, I like travel. And I said, why don't you travel? Because you're broke. I was like, how do I get paid to travel? Cruise ships. So I became the most successful personal trainer in cruise line history. In terms of service, I would not sell the bath algae, that they told you to sprinkle into your bath and you're going to lose 10 pounds because it was going to suck out all your toxins. I refused to sell that crap. But I did more personal training service than any other personal trainer in cruise line history. And then I met a cute girl in Alaska and she lived in Colorado.
You met her while you're a personal instructor, right?
And then, so I did not train her. I just noticed her. I got to admit, the first thing I ever said to my wife was, because she came up and had a mouthful of food and she said, hey, how you doing? And I went, So the moral of the story is you can grunt to the right people and get a result. So anyway, Colorado, we've been together 22 years. We've got 4 kids and we lived in Colorado for 18 years before we relocated to the desert because it snowed and I shoveled for 7 hours and I didn't want to use my snow shovel. So now I do use my snow shovel to scrape off rainwater off my pool cover. So.
I literally had in my notes about you meeting your wife on the ship, and I wanted to know if you were the personal trainer. And I'm like, yeah, you were really working the system there, weren't you?
I was.
He's no dummy.
You can't date passengers, but I had 1 week left, so why not?
He's like, I'm the top trainer for a reason.
That's right.
Okay, so other than the back pain of shoveling for 7 hours, what led you to St. George, Utah?
I'm a big outdoors guy, so I love wilderness. So mountain biking, skiing, and then since I got out here, jeeping. So I've got my Jeep and it's modded, and I go off at night, drive through the desert, get lost, camp, and then figure out where I am the next day and make it back. So the moral of the story is when I take people out, they're like, wow, you know the desert like the back of your hand. And I say, because you weren't here when I got lost. That's the only reason. So I spent a lot of time driving backwards trying to figure out how to turn a Jeep around on a dodgy road. But I love it. I like the heat. And St. George, Utah, we've got Zion close by. That's where all the tourists go. So everywhere else is quiet. So it's great.
How many ducks do you have on the dash?
0 ducks.
Thank you.
There will always remain 0 ducks on my dash. So.
And you can just tell everybody it's because they all fall out when I'm actually doing real Jeep stuff.
That's right. I was like, what's this Jeep thing? No, I don't want rubber duckies on my dash, but I do like Jeeps.
So I went to St. George. I've only been there once, but I went there probably 4 or 5 years ago on a golf trip with some buddies. We go to kind of like different locations around the U.S. mainly. And the most frustrating thing about St. George for me and this group was we had to go to 3 different places just to get ingredients to make an old fashioned. Like, now correct me if I'm wrong.
Just so you know, that was me in Estes Park 2 weeks ago.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
So there were let's see, 2 liquor stores.
Yep.
And state-run liquor stores, and they're open to like 5 or something. Like
they're open till 7 now. My wife did
7.
text me last week. She goes, "I need some white wine to make a birthday cake," and I was like, "Tough luck, babe. It's 7:05."
Here's the other weird thing. So yeah, we were like, "Hey, let's go get some beer," and then like you have to get that at I can't remember where you get it. We had to go to a supermarket, a liquor store, and then another place to get like just drinks.
Yeah.
And then we went out in town and we were going to get something to eat. And we went to a bar and then like we were trying to order a drink and they're like, "Oh, you have to buy some peanuts or something." And we're like, "What?"
Yeah, it's not that bad now, but I do ask how many ounces is a serving of whiskey? And they go, "I don't know." So then I go and ask your bartender. And I've heard like 1 ounce. And I'm like, "Yeah, no, thank you." So, no, you might take a hip flask out with you next time.
Yeah. But I just found that funny because it seemed like, and this has obviously changed, but you had to have some type of food item to coincide with your drink order.
Yeah, not anymore, but you can only buy liquor if it's got a designated bar. So if you're in a restaurant and they don't have a bar, you can only get beer and wine, and it can't be over 5% alcohol in the beer.
Man. Well, I tell you what, your town is probably devoid of alcoholics. I know that they would have a really hard time putting that together.
Yeah, you still see some hanging around the state liquor store, but you know, it's not, alcohol's not cheap. But you go across the border, and there's a little town in Nevada, and people will go there for their supplies. So.
Yeah, we actually drove down. I think it was like probably, I don't know, hour and 15, something like that. We drove down to Mesquite. Yeah, yep. Mesquite, Nevada, yep. And played a couple courses there, and they've got casinos and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Fun trip, but St. George is beautiful, and it seemed like they had a whole bunch of stuff going on there. There was like rock climbing. It looked like there was a lot of that.
Yeah, rock climbing, and we've got a ski resort, hour and a half away called Bryan Head. It's the only red rock ski resort in America. They get 300 inches of snow there, and then we get half an inch. But I've never even seen half an inch here. But yeah, we've got massive wilderness 2 hours away is Lake Powell. An hour away is Lake Mead. So if people like boating, they've got those options. Vegas is 90 minutes away. I drove to LA last week, 5.5 hours. Salt Lake, 4 hours. So, you do have to do a bit of driving, but it's a fun place to live.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about your transition from personal training on cruise ships, windsurfing. How did you get into coaching of all things after kind of a physically, demanding type career prior to that?
Yeah. So I was a personal trainer in a gym, and this lady came up to me and offered me a job. And I didn't quite know what she was talking about. But anyway, I met her husband the next day and he offered me a job and I still didn't know what they were talking about. But it turned into being a chiropractic office. I'd never been to a chiropractor, but I did like some rehab stuff for patients at this chiropractic clinic. And then he decided to change his modality to only adjusting like the top of the neck. So he was changing his whole business structure. So another chiropractor heard about me. And he offered me a job and he said, hey, I want you to do everything chiropractors do apart from adjust. So I did all the exams. I did the consultations. I did the report of findings. I took the x-rays. I marked the x-rays. And then while I was there, he said, you remind me of a guy called Tony Robbins. And I said, who's that? And he gave me a CD set. So it shows you how old this is, of Tony Robbins. And I didn't know there was such a thing as personal development at all. Never heard of it.
You just drew that with all the other Amway CDs you got over the years, right?
That's right. And so I just dived into that and I listened to it constantly. I loved it. And then I remember I was walking down the road listening to the CD and I could repeat it verbatim. And I remember when I'm making this like daytime TV, I'm enjoying listening to this, but I'm not doing anything.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's just entertainment. And I'm like, I can recite verbatim what Tony Robbins is saying. And I was like, what am I going to do? So my wife decided that I needed some help. And she said, hey, I've got you an intro call at Tony Robbins. I was like, when? And she goes, in your lunch break. I was like, the only time I have to myself, and I'm going to talk to somebody now. And so anyway, I wasn't enthusiastic about doing this call, but I jumped on. I was like, hey, Tony. And the guy's like, no, my name is Brian. I was like, oh, are you Tony's assistant? And he's like, no. I said, well, when do I talk to Tony? And he went, you don't. And I thought Tony Robbins was a guy with a CD. That was it. And didn't have any clue. But anyway, ended up giving my life savings, which wasn't that much at the time, to hire a coach called Dave with Tony Robbins. I came in with a lot of baggage into my marriage. I was a very angry person. I dealt with my anger through motorcycles and cars. I would just go as fast as I could. I'd quit drinking at the time because that was another vehicle I'd used to numb. And so I was like, I had 2 kids at the time. And I remember just going all in with my coach. And I doubled my income within a year. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting myself. I was a better husband and I was a better dad. And I was like, this coaching stuff's awesome. And every time I got on the phone with my coach, he's like, how's your week? I was like, it's great. It's great. I met this guy, John. And what we talked about last week, I said I was able to share it with John, and John said it really helped. And so every week I'd come with stories of people that I'd worked with. And it was about a year and a half into it. My son, who was about 6 months old, had RSV, the long stuff kids get. And my wife calls as I'm driving to work. It's like 8 a.m., 7:30 in the morning or something. And she's like, our son's turning blue. What do I do? And I was like, get him on your lap, drive to the hospital, 5 minutes away. Go, I'll meet you there. So I called work and I said, hey, I'm not going to be in today, rushing my son to urgent care. And I said, when I know something, I'll let you guys know. My son's turning blue. And my boss, he responded on voicemail because back then hospitals didn't get great reception either. And he said, it's your wife's job to look after your kids, not yours. Get back to work.
Dude, what?
So I quit. And then I called my coach that day. I said, I quit my job. And he's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know, but I like this coaching thing. And he said, I've been waiting for you to say this for about a year. He says, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but he says, I think you're built for it. And I was like, huh. And I said, so what do I do? And so I actually flew out. He was living in Calabasas, California. And I went and stayed with him for a few days and just got my head on the right place and decided I was going to be a coach. And then he called me, I forget how many months later, but I'd had clients and he says, hey, Tony Robbins is after coaches. I said, that's great. And he says, you should apply. And I said, I don't think so. And he said, you should. And I said, why? He said, because you're built for this. And I was like, well, what do I need? And he started listing off all the credentials. And I was like, man, I don't have one. I was like, why would I apply? He said, because I think you'll get the job. And I was like, I don't think I will. And anyway, I ended up applying just to shut Dave up. And apparently there's 250 people applied. And we had 10 interviews and the last interview was 10 days long. And then I got the job. So 6 of us got the job. And so every interview, I was like, there's no way I'm going through the next round. And then the 10-day one, I was like, there's no way I'm getting this job. And I just showed up and I delivered what I could do. And that worked really well. And so I got the job at Tony Robbins and ended up with going up to 90 clients, so 90 clients a month.
Are you going insane?
I did, yeah.
I
don't recommend that.
Was that anger coming back?
No, I hit absolute burnout. So I worked for Tony for 5 years.
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, I've met him a few times, but no, not like would sit down and have a chat, type of thing, but in group situations. But I was one of their top performing coaches. I worked with people all over the planet. And if you said, would I do it again? Not that many clients, no. But I'm so glad the younger version of me did, because I wouldn't be who I am today without going through that season. And I've been coaching for 15 years. I've got 30,000 hours of one-on-one coaching at this point. I still love it.
How do you even catalog all that? You got 90 people a month. Like, I mean, you had to be going into some of those meetings like, I don't even know who this person is.
So I'm going to be honest. There'd be nights where I'd go to bed and just sob, and because I was like, I'm failing these people. I would dream that I was failing people. The benefit of being dyslexic is, if anyone's ever read the book David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, he's got a section in there about dyslexia. It's all about underdogs overcoming their giants. And it says in there about dyslexics, you either end up in jail or successful. And it said, because you can't write to remember anything. So your only other option is retention. And so even now my retention's through the roof. And I put that down to, I was so embarrassed about writing as a kid. I didn't. And even if I did, I couldn't read my own writing. So I just remember. And so that served me really well. So the thing that didn't serve me well in high school now serves me great as a career. And I'll have clients and it'll be conversations years ago. And I'll say, well, you said, and I've had clients go, wow, your notes must be amazing. And I was like, no, it's all in the head. So I had my season of, just being from elated. I'd have clients going, Andrew, this is the best coaching in the world. Like, you're the best coach in the world. I'm like, yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. I really appreciate it. He's like, I'm crushing it. Income's through the roof. And I was like, yeah, I'm amazing. And then the next client, Andrew, nothing you've taught me is working. You suck. And I was like, oh, I'm the worst coach in the world. And I actually called my boss at Tony Robbins. I said, I'm going to have to quit. And he said, what do you mean? You've worked so hard to be here. I said, I can't take it anymore. I said, I'm going insane. And I said, I feel like I've got 90 people living inside of me. I said, and I'm responsible for all their results. And he said, well, what's your job? I said, to get people results. And he went, that's not your job. I said, well, you guys call me a results coach. So I sort of thought that was, part of the game. And he said, your job is to show up as the best version of you. He said, your client's job is to get results. He says, are you showing up at the best version of you? I was like, not a chance, mate. No. And so I realized that I'd given my power to every single one of my clients to control how I feel.
That's so interesting, because it would appear that you're really empathetic, right? And you care about what you're teaching and preaching to your clients. And that kind of leads to a detriment psychologically, because you carry so much weight around of their emotional baggage, and you're kind of manifesting it in your own head.
Yeah.
Please continue.
One thing,
100%. And
from being on your group calls, over and over, I'm thinking, man, Andrew and Jason, you guys aren't, coaches. You guys are counselors.
Yeah. So this is the way I look at it. So counseling and therapy are great modalities. They've helped a lot of people, but it's different than what I do. So coaching is, where are you? Where do you want to go? Mm-hmm. And then we're going to go there. Therapy is, where are you? When did the trauma happen?
Got it. Yep. That makes sense.
They talk a lot about the trauma. This is Freud. It's just like, hey, your childhood trauma, you did this. So I've had people going, yeah, I was abused as a child. And I was like, right, what? But what do you want? Where do you want to go? Like, you can tell me that story, but you know what? You're going to lose any resourcefulness that you have, because you're going to go back into the psychology of that child. And that child isn't capable of solving your problems today. Never mind solving the problems of where you want to go. Mm-hmm. So my whole focus is accessing people's resourcefulness. And for most people, they're going back to a younger version of themselves that was already overwhelmed to ask questions of how they move forward, and they get stuck. So for me, I like to connect with the future version of me that solved the problems and ask them how they did it. So this sounds like weird, but I call it remembering the future.
Yeah.
For everybody listening, it's like, right, is it possible that a future version of you has solved the current problems that you're struggling with?
That's a great question.
And so I'm like, with the right decisions at the right time with the right people, is it possible that those problems have been solved? And I've never had anybody tell me no. They're always like, yeah, it's possible. And I was like, right, so if the problem now you've just agreed that it's solvable, that future version of you, how did they solve it? And then they generally come up with ideas. And if they can't, my second line is like, well, if I could inject, like, let's say Richard Branson's psychology into you, he's got your spouse, your kids, your network, your money, your problems, but it's not Richard Branson, it's just his psychology. Would Richard Branson's psychology find a solution? And they're like, well, if it was Richard Branson trying to figure it out, yeah, he would do this, 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 and this. I was like, great. It's still the individual that solves their problems, but they're coming from a different perspective. They believe Richard Branson could solve the problems, but they don't believe they can. So they get stuck because most people want to be right over successful.
Oh, yeah. That's a good soundbite there.
Andrew's full of good sound bites.
Now, Ted, you and Andrew, how did you two connect? I know, Jason Dries, you had done coaching with him.
I don't know where your partnership lies, but Andrew runs all the coaching calls and group calls throughout the week on the Jason Dries, and then on top of everything he does himself. But I would have to say that, you guys see a lot of inspirational posts I put on. I would say about 50% of those are words of Andrew in the back of my head from listening to him over and over. I mean, the guy is completely inspiring, and the content I get and the motivation I get is awesome. I mean, it's really priceless what you put out.
You're supposed to give him credit on those every time. So I expect some royalty checks soon.
I probably stole them off somebody else. So
yeah, they're all words. It's just arranged differently.
That's right.
I just write down how it affected me, and then I put that out there.
Hey, I have kind of a, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but you mentioned you've coached clients all over the world. Is your, I guess, largest kind of core base of clients in the U.S.?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I'll have the odd, like at Tony Robbins, it was very broad. And then once I left Tony Robbins, it became more US based and a few Europeans, but pretty much 95% US based.
In the clients that you have had, like in Europe or any other countries, how would you compare and contrast their approach to what you're doing for them and what they're struggling with compared to Americans?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I still believe America is the land of opportunity. Yeah, it's got a very different psychology. And for me, I don't believe I'd be able to have achieved what I've been able to achieve in any other country. And so I've had the privilege of living in different countries. But Australia's got a term for it, tall poppy syndrome.
Tall poppy syndrome?
Yeah. So if the poppy starts getting too tall, you cut it down. Everybody wants to be equal. That's the culture.
Got it.
Is to keep everybody at the same level. And that's very English as well, And so I remember one of my friends 3 years ago, he's like, back in England, he said, when are you going to be happy? And I went, what do you mean? He's like, well, why do you always have to be doing something? I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're always up to something in business or going somewhere. Like, when are you going to be happy? I said, I am happy. And he's like, well, how can you be happy when you're always trying to do stuff? I said, because I enjoy doing stuff. And that was the culture back home. It is very much, like, for me, watching TV is a big pastime for most people.
Yep.
And for me, even when we went back to England 3 years ago, there's a mountain just to the north of my town called Black Combe. And I said, anybody been up that? And they were like, no, always wanted to. And I was like, well, why don't we go? And nobody had met had ever been to the top of it. Now you can see Scotland, Ireland, the Isle of Man, and Wales, and obviously England from the top of that mountain on a clear day. And they're like, oh, well, maybe another time. And that's what I hear a lot. And so I got the train and I walked to the mountain and I walked to the top of the mountain and walked back, got back on the train. And I was in Loch Ness and I said, hey, who wants to go and swim in Loch Ness? And they're like, oh, it's cold today. And I was like, but it's the hottest day in 26 years. If not now, never. And yeah, but the water temperature is 37 degrees. And I was like, yeah, but the air temperature is 75. And I was like, so this is the best day in 26 years. So I jumped in it and it was chilly, but I swam in Loch Ness. And Loch Ness, interesting fact, 6 feet from the side, it's 100 feet deep. It is a deep, cold lake. But these memories. So I've always been the type of person that nobody else I knew windsurfed. Nobody else I knew skied. Nobody else I knew mountain biked. And I moved to Liverpool. That blew people's minds. And they're like, how did you go to Liverpool? I said, I got on the train. It leaves town multiple times a day. And they're like, well, how did you find a job? I said, I got a newspaper. How do you find somewhere to live? I said, same newspaper. It had places to rent in there, and I walked around and I put 100 resumes in town and I got a job. And then, so when I moved to Spain, that blew people's minds, and then the cruise ship. And, funny story, my best friend back in England is called Dave as well. And we walked into a local bar where the choice of drug is plant fertilizer because it's cheap. All right. I don't recommend it because it does fry your brain. So we walk in, it's karaoke night. The music stops. My buddy Dave, who's a firefighter, the guy's huge. He's built. Top of his voice, he says, "This is my friend from America, and his garage is bigger than your house." Whole bar stops, all eyes on me. I sit down. I've got 5 guys sat around me like, "Oh, you think you're better than us?" And I was like, "Not right now. No, I don't, I don't think I'm better right now." And they're like, "Hate Americans." And I was like, "Oh, do I sound American?" So FYI, in England, everyone thinks I'm American now. All right. So this is an American accent to English people over there. And they're like, "Hate Americans. You think you're better than us?" And I was like, no. And they were like, "Do you know Brad Pitt?" I said, "Oh yeah, me and Brad, we hang out all the time. And Angelina, yeah, great friends, live next door." And they're like, "Well, what are they really like?" So again, they're all on plant fertilizer, but it stopped me getting beaten the crap out of it. But that's my buddy Dave. He likes getting me into sticky situations. So.
Oh my God. That's like the equivalent of throwing a newborn into the pool to teach him how to swim, right? Or like
Yeah.
shock the system.
He's just laughing in the corner. He's one of the toughest guys I've ever met. And he's just laughing. He's like, "You're going to get beat up." And I was like, "Yeah, probably."
Equivalent to Colin taking you out to some random place.
Yeah, pretty much. Wow. Okay, man, you've lived quite the life so far, and we've only gotten a little bit into it.
We don't know all your businesses yet either.
Yeah. Just a little bit,
Well, Andrew, you don't really talk much about yourself, when it comes to the coaching, obviously. But I know you have other businesses underneath your belt besides being the right hand to Jason Drees. What else are you doing? I know you're doing real estate and many other things. Yeah,
so I work for a few different places. I actually coach coaches how to have successful businesses with another company. I'm not the head of there, but they bring me in mindset stuff and work with some of the coaches to help them, actually run a business. Because, most people, they might love their craft, but they don't know how to run the business side of things. So I work with those guys, help coaches become profitable, therapists, stuff like that. And then some other real estate companies where I'll help really early on investors have the right psychology to stay in the game. Ted, I know you've heard me say this a lot, but it's very rarely the work that stops people. It's the emotions around the work. It's the ups, it's the downs, it's the roller coasters, and it causes people to quit. So I really help them sort of get their head in the right game to stay in there. So I work with some bigger real estate investors who have got different programs to help newer real estate investors get started and stay the course. And then I've just done a rebrand. So for years, I've been Devlin Worldwide, and I hired a chief marketing officer, absolutely phenomenal guy. He was the head marketer at Black Desert Resorts, which is the new PGA golf resort in St. George. It's the first PGA golf tournament happened since the 60s this year. And so he became my CMO, my chief marketing officer, and he's done a complete behind the scenes rebrand. We're just ready to launch that. So that'll be andrewdevlin.com. All honesty, I've had a hard time branding myself. I've always liked to brand something else. And I've come to a place in my career where I've realized people follow people now. They don't follow companies.
Yes.
And so if you look at all social media, whether it's Richard Branson or Elon Musk or any of those people, that their companies have less followers than the personalities. And so I realized, right, I need to rebrand, and that's become andrewdevlin.com. So we're launching. So that is andrewdevlin.com 1.1 is up, and I'll be releasing a 5-day mini series. So if you guys want to check out that. But yeah, I generally work with people that sounds weird, but don't need motivation. You got to come hungry. My job is to help with the psychology, and my real passion is making sure marriages stay intact and deep relationships with kids, and then that we don't lose ourselves in the process of growth. I see a lot of guys and girls, they become so focused on work and business and growth that they forget about why they're doing it. So my job is to keep their true north in like the crosshairs at all times. I've been homeschooling my kids for 10 years as well. And so we finally stopping that. They're going to go over to the ROTC full time. So military school. And then me and my wife have a business together focused on mental wellness. So microbiome, gut optimization to optimize brain function, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, so getting your body to manufacture those compounds rather than adding stimulants and whatnot into it. So those are sort of my, work with a few key companies that I really do like the owners. And then I've had my own coaching practice for 10 years, but this next level, I've never had a website, which might sound crazy. I've been 100% word of mouth. I've been the keynote speaker for Southeast Toyota, which stretches from North Carolina to Florida for 3 years in a row. I've trained most of their dealers, but never needed a website. And now with the digital age, I'm like, yeah, okay, I need some online digital presence.
Come on, man, you're not that old.
Well, I'm not that old, but I just found word of mouth has always been great.
Yeah,
and I get great clients from that. But so I've just never really needed one. And but now looking forward to scaling, growing my one-on-one coaching, mastermind, and then group coaching programs.
The big question is Love and Money podcast going to have a season 3?
Yes, Love Plus Money, Plus Money, which may be rebranded, and that is all up to my CMO now. It's good. So yeah, we'll have a season 3. And my full focus has been doing all the back end of the website stuff to make it smooth.
We were all joking at lunch today. It was Colin Schwartz, Owen, and Fernando Angelucci. And we're all doing lunch today. And we're like, we're talking about your podcast with your wife. And then we all said, would any of us have a podcast with our wife?
And we were all like, hard pass, immediately.
Well, it's not hard pass. It's like, would our wives even do it?
She's awesome. So she's a coach herself. And so she's actually a majority of her clients now are real estate agents.
Oh, interesting.
So females, and again, just helping them manage health, fitness, relationships, kids, and scaling their, obviously their real estate businesses as well. So it's funny how we both ended up in real estate, which is, here we are. It wasn't part of the plan, but it's been great. I've met some absolute incredible people in the real estate world.
Do you think that's because there is a big cross section of that group that is crazy?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that entrepreneurship is sexy, but very difficult. But I think a lot of people, they came out the W-2 world and they're like, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to work when I want to work. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that, So the other thing that people find is leadership is lonely. And if you're growing, you're going to spend the majority of time thinking that you're insane. It's like, what am I doing? And so I come in and, this is sort of like my visual. So we were foster parents, we've adopted kids. And so we've done a lot of training on that side of things. But one of the best trainings I went to for kids, they were just talking about how the brain works. And there was this example of if this is my brain, here's my brain stem. Here's the emotional part of my brain. And then here's the logical part of my brain. And it fits in our head like this. Well, logic is the slowest part of the human brain. Emotion is the second fastest and primal is the fastest. So what happens in most people in real estate, they start off like this and then they quickly go like this. We call it flipping the lid. And they're just bouncing between emotional and primal. And my job as a coach is to come in and get that logic back on and assess marriage, assess how they're behaving, assess their nutrition, assess how they're doing business. And so for most people, they keep walking around with their lid flipped, hoping that something's going to work. So most of my clients, I've been through hell with them, and that might be divorces. It might be business partnerships that have gone south. It might be challenges with their kids. So most people come to me for business coaching, but the majority of work we do is generally internal, marriage, kids, relationships. And that's been a big passion of mine for a long time.
Hey, I was thinking about this while you were talking. Do you find everybody's different, right? But I would assume that there's a lot of commonalities that you see that, coaching in the entrepreneur space, especially. You mentioned earlier that motivation is generally not the problem. And I can't remember how you put it exactly, but it's more of basically keeping the train on the tracks. And I guess Do you find you have to really tailor a lot of your coaching based on the person, or is it more where there are so many common themes with people that struggle that you're able to, kind of say, hey, like these are the things that I've seen work with a multitude of clients, and you don't have to tweak it as much every single time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So as I said, with 30,000 hours, it's extremely rare that I hear something I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
At this point. And so just like many things, if you're a great mechanic, and you can probably figure out how a motorcycle works, if you've worked on cars for years, there's crossover. And so what I found is for most businesses, you sell a product or a service.
Yep.
And most businesses a hair salon and a doctor's office are very, very similar. There's more similarities than differences. And so one of my sort of uniquenesses is I look for what's the same in business, where most people look for what's different. They're like, oh, you sell cars and you do real estate. I go, what's the same? What's the same about real estate and selling cars? And it's like, well, you sell to people.
Yep.
And so you provide a service and a product. I'm like, great. You need customers. You need to do reach outs. You need to do follow up. If I get a used car in, I need to do a market assessment. Am I buying something that's crap? Can I make a profit on that? Same as a fix and flip, And so there's a lot of similarities. So my job is, one of my giftings is making complicated things easy. And so I will break down things that most people see as complicated, and people go, oh, that sounds easy, because simple attracts and complicated makes lazy. So wherever people are struggling, they've made it way too complex in the mind. And I come in and make it simple. And then I hold them accountable. And so you've got coaches out there that will hold you accountable. Like, how many calls are you going to make? And you got to make more calls. And that's the accountability side, but more from a drill sergeant standpoint. But then you've got other coaches who are very, they're very relational. And they're like, oh, that must be so hard. Yeah, I understand what you're going through. And they have a lot of empathy for the client. But the truth is, you need a coach who has both. You need somebody that can be empathetic to where you're at with life and understand. But you also need somebody to hold you to the fire of what you said you were going to do. And the third part is, most people cannot articulate what they want.
How do you get around that, or how do you pull that out of them to figure out what the issues are that you need to help them with?
So so a lot of people will make statements like, well, I just don't want to be overwhelmed, and I don't want to struggle, and I don't want my marriage to suffer. And I was like, great, what do you want?
And then long pause.
Yeah, they don't. If you cannot articulate, it's like if we went hunting and I was like, right, we're not hunting rabbits. Are you ready, guys? And you're like, yeah, but I need some more information. What are we hunting? Not goose. And I'm just like, okay, so we need a target, but most people do not know how to articulate what they want. And then if they do, they don't believe they can go and get it. So it's like showing up to the gym going, I don't know if I can get in shape. Well, you're not going to train very hard, are you? So my job is to help them get clear on what they really want. And I've got, various exercises we can walk through and show people how you get clear on what you want. And then most people, they miscategorize. So an example I give is, if I said to you guys, my goal is to work out 5 days a week, or my goal is to date my wife once a week. Is that what I want, why I want it, or how am I going to get it?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think through, because like everybody struggles with something. I'm sitting here thinking, like, what do I really want?
Yeah.
I don't know if I know. I don't know if I could articulate it. Like I know I want to be happy, but
yeah,
I don't know exactly.
Andrew's starting to tear you apart right now.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what would make me happy. I know things that I enjoy, but it doesn't make me happy as a whole. You know what I mean? Like that's a tough question to answer.
Yeah, happiness can get us in trouble, because if my goal's happy, I'm like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. So I focus on legacy and purpose.
Purpose, purpose is that's a big thing. I would say, especially for men. I don't know if you would agree with that, between men and women. A sense of purpose. That's like, I'm sure you've dealt with people that have gotten close to retirement, or maybe even retired.
Yep.
And that seems to be like a common theme, at least in my amateur analysis here, where people just lack a sense of purpose after their career. So you see a lot of people that die shortly after they retire.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Or even like we'll see, like when kids leave the house, a lot of marriages crumble.
Yeah.
Because like I tell my kids all the time, I said, I love you, mom, and I like your mom more than you guys because your mom's sticking with me and you guys are all leaving. So if I don't make my wife a priority now, there's no chance I'll make her a priority when they've left. Like I have a 14-year-old, 15, and just turned 17-year-old. So all super close. January, I'll have 3 15-year-olds. So all super, super close. And so so again, if I said, my goal is to date my wife once a week and my goal is to go to the gym 5 days a week, that's not a goal. Those are strategies to achieve a goal. I want a deep, loving, connected, passionate marriage with my wife. Why do I want that? Because I believe marriage is a bedrock for my kids' stability.
Yeah.
And how am I going to do that? I'm going to date my wife. But if I go, right, I'm going to date my wife once a week, I can't go to the movie theaters because that doesn't give me my outcome of having a passionate, connected, loving marriage. If I said I want fun with her, sure, I can go and watch a movie. So I feel like a lot of people, they focus on, I went to the gym 5 days a week. Yeah, but what's your outcome? My outcome to go to the gym is to have the confidence, the energy, and the drive that I need to be the best coach I can be, because this is my why. I don't believe my first client of the day should get any less or more of me than my last client of the day. I don't believe I should be physically or mentally tired from my work. So my exercise and my nutrition are absolutely vital to my clients' results. I put the purpose into my nutrition. So when it comes to my workouts, my exercise, my nutrition, my wife should have an energetic, loving husband. My kids should have that. And I shouldn't be going to bed depleted at the end of the day. I should be going to bed because it's the right time. I also didn't get to really know my grandparents because they all died when I was young. And I was like, right, I am determined to have a relationship with my grandkids. I want to know them. I want to pour into them. And what I eat today and what my activity levels are like is going to determine how long, by a bus or some unforeseen circumstance, but my nutrition and exercise is vital for the longevity of my relationships with my grandkids. So I think about that today. Then I go, how am I going to do that? And I go, so the person that can come up with a strong enough why or a strong enough person can bear almost any how. So I don't care what I need to do in terms of how to have that marriage, to have that long-term relationship with my kids. And so I think about things like with my nutrition, does this help me have a great afternoon with my clients? Because I am fully committed to my clients getting their results. And I don't want to go, you know what, I'm really sorry I'm off today. I had way too much food for lunch. I've got a little bit of a food coma going on. Sorry, Ted. I know you know how it feels. I don't want that. I want to bring the vitality to my clients. It's the standard that I've chosen to live my life by, And if you guys come to my house, I don't want to be the hypocrite. I see a lot of hypocrites out there speaking. They do not teach what they are doing. They teach what sells.
They're Instagram stars, and they don't care about what's going on in their personal life.
Yep. So they'll hit nuances, but it's not congruent with who they are. So I want people to think about what are the fundamentals. Yeah. So like happiness, we need to quantify what happiness is. It's like me going to a car dealer and going, hey, I would like a vehicle. And they go, great. For what purpose? To go places. That's how a lot of people are going to their goals, And so we got to quantify. So happiness, what is that? It's like, well, I get to wake up without an alarm clock. I get to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my kids 90% of the time. I get to, go for a walk with my wife 4 or 5 nights out of the week. We get to go on vacation to great places. So we can build what that is. I get to play guitar. I get to mountain bike. I get to go into the wilderness. And we can build a framework of what that would look like. So what I tell people is you need to build a great movie trailer. Your goals need to be like a great movie trailer. So the last movie trailer that really excited me was Top Gun Maverick. And I'm like, I am going to the movie theater to watch that movie. And I want people, when they can articulate the goals, to have that type of excitement. It's like, this is what my life would look like. This is what my marriage would look like. This is what my relationship with my kids would look like. This is what my physique would look like. Rather than me saying, hey, I want to get in shape. Great. What is that? Because sumo wrestlers are in shape for sumo wrestling.
Yeah.
Long distance runners are in shape for long distance running. Bodybuilders are in shape for bodybuilding. But what is your definition of shape? And that's what people need to get. How much money do you want? because most people get into the more. And I'm like, great. So what I do with my clients, I'm like, right, what is your survival number? What is your stability number? What's your good number? What's your great number? And what's your excellence number? Based on what you want. I do not want a second home in Malibu, and I do not want a Ferrari. Would I like to drive a Ferrari on a track and thrash that thing? Yes. But would I like to live with them? No, not my deal. It's not what I'm driven by. So it has to be my personal definition of success. And I was in a mastermind and they brought Grant Cardone in. And there was a lot of people who've got private jets. Grant Cardone went, private jets. Private helicopters is where it's at. Our next meeting, I would say 20% of the group had become private helicopter experts. And I was like, this isn't even your goal. This wasn't even your dream, but now you feel less than because you've only got a private jet and not a private helicopter. What is it that you want? And then you have to protect that vision because it will be infiltrated by other people around you and you'll feel like your goals aren't enough now. But what do you want for you and your family? What is the definition of freedom? Because I've met a lot of wealthy people who have no freedom because now they have to make 50, 80, $100,000 a month to keep up with a lifestyle that doesn't really make them happy anymore.
Oh man, that is so good. How do you think about social media and how prevalent it's become in society and what it's done to the psyche and outlook that a lot of entrepreneurs have in particular?
Yeah, what I know is they only present the highlight reels and not the floor clippings. But when I judge myself on my floor clippings against their highlight reel. And I've just seen so many people that it's not real. So I've had the fortune to be around some really, really successful people and their whole world can be crumbling. But on social media, it looks absolutely phenomenal. But I've coached them. And that's the thing. It's like everyone's got their own movie and they're all actors and trying to portray things. And it's like, and I think what we're going to come across is we're going to come to a place where people want authenticity more than anything else. And I think we've gone through, like, there's kids not using phones now because they're so sick and tired of seeing their parents on their phones all the time. And I think we're going through this cycle of everything looking polished. And even if you think about dental work, if you look at people who had a lot of dental work and their teeth are perfect, you go, fake.
Yeah, you're right.
Too white. And so now great dentists make teeth look flawed and not super white, so it looks real. And that's what people are after. They're after a real connection with people again. And I'm seeing this from my own events. I did an event where all these entrepreneurs came out to St. George. I rented the house where Kevin Costner rents in a state park called Snow Canyon. Phenomenal place. And I give everybody a break between 12 and 5. And my entrepreneur clients were like, why are we having a 5-hour break in the middle of the day? And I was like, because you guys need space and time to connect. And I had people almost cancel because of that gap. And we hiked in that gap. People sat in the hot tub, they swam, and we went Jeep off-roading up sand dunes and over rocks. We went zip lining across canyons, so we had some fun. But I told people, do whatever you want. If you want to sleep, sleep. If you want to watch a movie, watch a movie. If you want to come hiking with me. And the number one thing people said is, I didn't realize how much I needed to bond with people. It was the highlight of the event because I give people space. But I tell you this, every coach, speaker I knew told me that was stupid to do.
What gave you the idea that would work?
Talking to my clients, a lot of them were burnt out, and they hadn't rested and they felt lonely. And I was like, right, what can I do to help them rejuvenate? Rest isn't it, it's rejuvenation. So I give them the ability to rejuvenate in any way that they saw possible. And so I came back and they're all in the hot tub. We finished the event at 9:00 at night. We went from 5 to 9. I brought in all the food. So all food was covered. They didn't have to leave. It's 12 at night and people are still hanging out chatting. And they said, I've never bonded so much with a group than this group. And it was 2.5 days long because we need space. Most entrepreneurs, if they've got a bit of space, like something's wrong. What's wrong? I've got some downtime. I must not be working hard enough. And they try and fill it. But I look at Einstein. And obviously, smart guy. And he discovered the theory of relativity. Do you fellas know how he discovered the theory of relativity? What his methodology was?
I don't know.
I was waiting for Owen to respond first.
Ted knows.
Tell me.
Naps.
I don't know that one.
All right. He took naps with metal balls in his hands.
What?
So when he fell asleep, the metal balls would hit the ground. And then when he woke up, his brain was filled with ideas and he would write all of those out. And that's how he discovered the theory of relativity. He created space. Isaac Newton was sat in a garden long enough to watch apples fall from a tree. Have you ever sat in a garden long enough to watch an apple fall from a tree?
No.
But these are some of the greatest scientific minds that ever lived that created space to think. I remember listening to Brandon Turner talk about the best thing he does is 90 minutes of massage.
Yep. I've heard him say that too, how he gets his best ideas during that time.
So for most entrepreneurs, when is your time?
Sauna and shower.
Awesome. Yeah. And sometimes that's bike rides. Sometimes it's hiking, but do we have to listen to a podcast or motivational CDs or whatever? Or can we be still? Can we be quiet in our minds and let's see what comes to work for us? So I can't tell you you're going to discover the next incredible theory in science by taking naps with metal balls in your hands. That was what worked for Einstein. And we have to follow our intuition. And that's what my intuition said. Give these people a break. And then I was challenged by people like, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. But it was the highlight for most people. So sometimes we have to follow our own path because we're so trained to follow other people's paths.
Well, I think, kind of tying it back to social media too, at no time in history have we been connected, in air quotes, better than we are now. But you find more and more that people are lonely, but they're not alone.
Yep.
They just don't bond the same way they used to and spend time. It's like you scroll through your Instagram feed and look at everybody else's lives without actually experiencing it with them. We become voyeurs instead of experiencers.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's been 15 years since I've been single. And I remember that year I was single, I was trying to reaching out to new people, had their number, and I would make a phone call because I wanted to talk and get to know that person that we connected, whatever. And then I get a text message back after getting a voicemail. Hey, what's up? I'm like, no, I want to get to know you, So when we go on our date, that I actually have something to talk about, and this text message thing wasn't working. And I was struggling because every woman I was talking to at the time was wanting a text. And then my wife was not the texter. She wanted to talk, and we were able to connect, and here we are. So I couldn't imagine how worse it is now than it was then.
And let's face it, all the filters out there, it's like people don't even look like how they look. And it's like, what's going to get more clicks? What's going to get more likes? And you guys probably know this, but it's now shifting from how many followers you have to how good your content, because AI is scanning all your social. And if it's valuable, it's going to put it in front of more people. So it's less dependent now on how many followers you have. It is more dependent on, are you speaking to an audience that is going to gravitate to what you're saying? Is it valuable? Because AI is so fast now.
That's funny you say that, because last month or two, I've been making those short little posts, and I keep on getting messages from Facebook and like, yeah, your text posts with no pictures are getting 218% more viewership than this. Thank you, Andrew. And on top of that, we are boosting your reach. We are boosting your reach probably about a dozen times in the last, 3-4 weeks.
Yeah. And so is it relevant? Do people want to hear from it? And because AI is looking for, is it relevant? Not, do you have 10,000 followers or anything? It's changing again. So I think we're going to find that, it's going to be like an ability for us to really speak an honest message and impact people at a much higher level than just the influencer stage. Because I think people are, again, my opinion, I think people are burning out from the influencer because it's just like, oh, here's my product. Here, it's become QVC. And I think people are looking for genuine humans.
Yeah, I think that's it's polarizing in a good way for people that have stuck to their guns about being authentic and creating content that came from their heart and their mind, rather than just, hey, ChatGPT, create some content today, and then you post some sound bites or catchy sounding phrases and be an influencer. I don't know what made me think of this, but you mentioned you're going to have 3 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
Did you guys do that on purpose? You mentioned adopting so that you could create your lesson plans a lot more easily, so you didn't have to have 4 different ones. You just had all the same age, the same grade.
Yeah, honestly, after my second kid, I was like, I hate babies. And I hate my wife being pregnant. This sucks. So it's funny. My wife remembers joyous pregnancies and I was like, no, that's just the female brain dropping all the. And I was like, it sucks. And so we're in foster training, and they're going around the room. There's about 40 people. And I'm like, what type of kid do you want? And they're like, I would like a baby. And I would like this gender. And I was like, this ethnicity and stuff. And they got to me and they said, what do you like? I was like, kids that like skiing and mountain biking. And they're like, how old? I was like, I don't know, 8.
Yeah.
You know, that's good. And, so most people don't foster and adopt older kids because they come with more baggage.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, like, we both work from home. We both deal with a lot of psychology. If it's not us, who is it?
Yeah.
And I was like, and I was like, I don't know about you. I don't want to wipe any more bums. And I was like, so I want a kid that I can talk to and engage. And it's there's a movie out there called Instant Family with Mark Wahlberg.
That is so funny you said that, because I was thinking of when they were in that room and they were talking about that, the whole Blind Side thing. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah.
That's
And
exactly
she's just like, I would like an athletic African-American boy. And like, no, you're just saying the Blind Side movie. That's all it is. And so my adopted girls were watching that a couple of nights ago, and I was just about to go to bed. And I thought, is anything going to come out? They've seen it before. I was like, but is anything going to come out? So I just sat down with them, put my arms around them, and sat on the couch till, I don't know, 10:30 at night, 11:30 at night. And, the next day, my oldest adopted said, was I a hard kid when you adopted me? And I was like, oh, yeah, you were really difficult. She was angry. Her sister was sad. We adopted 2 biological sisters. And she's like, for how long? I said, at least 1.5 years of really, really hard. And she said, did you ever cry? I said, I cried a lot. Yeah. And, she's 15 and she going, it makes me feel bad now. And then she said this, and she goes, but I have no regrets. I said, you have no regrets. I said, that's great to know. And I said, why not? She goes, well, look at the depth of our relationship now. She said, I needed to test you to know that I could trust you.
Oh, she's too smart.
Ooh.
She is wicked smart. And she's told me stuff like this. She goes, Dad, you're the only person when they drive, I don't have to look out the window because I know you've got it. And she goes, and I trust you 100%. And I said, why do you trust me 100%? She goes, well, you passed all my tests. And she goes, it's the only way I can relax is if a man passes my tests. And I said, and then what does that lead to, babe? She goes, well, I can trust you so I don't have to control. And I went, I said, so what does that tell you about the boys who you're ultimately going to marry? And she went, I'm going to test them like crazy. And I will have to relax once they've showed me I can trust them, and then they can lead.
Oh, man.
She's not. There's no way she's 15.
Now, admittedly, she's married. Oh, she's not married. She's my daughter who listens to me a lot. And I do a lot of relationship coaching. So
sounds like we should be interviewing her.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Can
you just swap out real quick?
She's more introspective than any adult.
She's awesome. She's definitely an overcomer. She does not take no crap from no one. And but she wants to be FBI or Air Force. And she's wicked smart. So, but then her younger sister says, yeah, but I'm going to be wealthier than you. And she's like, how do you figure that one out? She goes, I'm going to marry a rich guy and make his whole life light up. And I was like, all right, okay. My adopted girls have got it all figured out. But I love being their dad. So we got them. Yeah. I didn't like vacationing when everybody else is off. And I wanted kids I could actually like change where they're at, and I just thought, like, I've rescued both my dogs. I called the pet rescue place and was like, what dogs have you got that might not be adopted? They said, well, big dogs don't get adopted and big black dogs don't get adopted. And I was like, okay. They said, we have a big black Great Dane. I said, done. I'll take her, and I love being the person that can show up. And I'm not scared of the hard, because the most and again, for everybody listening, I want you to think back in a time in your life that you're really proud of yourself, of how you handled yourself. I guarantee it wasn't an easy time. You had to stretch, you had to dig deep, and we can look back and go, I can go, I'm really proud of that late teen I was, that early 20s I was, that early 30s I was, when I fostered. And I go, I'm really proud of that. So now when I'm going through hard times, I know my future self is going to be really proud of what I'm going through right now. So I'm going to be proud of what I'm going through. Does that make sense? If I'm going to be proud of what I'm going through, I might as well be proud of what I'm going through right now.
Yeah, that does make sense. Well, okay. Speaking of being proud of going through some tough times, we have a section in our podcast that we call
Failing Forward.
It's obligatory. We have to do this every time. You have inspired me just listening to you talk here. I know Ted has.
That's what Andrew does.
Ted has given you major accolades here behind the scenes.
Cheers, Ted.
But
well deserved.
Maybe could you talk about a time in your life or business where you went through a tough time or you made a mistake or a failure, and you wouldn't take that back because it made you, stronger, made you into the man you are?
Yeah, I've got, like, as I said, I've got a few, like, as I mentioned before, when I went through a glass door, shredded my legs to bits and damaged my spine.
Oh, that was the accident.
Yeah, so I was on full parallel bars trying to get my legs working again. And so I still have some pain from that accident. I was 8 years old. But I wouldn't take it back because it made me really determined to overcome things. And it also took me out of school, which means I feel like I wasn't programmed to think a certain way, behave a certain way. And the luxury that gave me is a lot of free time as a kid to think, to dream, to come up with ideas. I used to draw a lot and I had a great imagination as a kid. And so I wouldn't take that back. And then I got into a lot of adventure sports, and I broke most things at this point, ripped things in there. But I've been able to overcome pretty effectively. Like when I see other people who might have been injured, broke a leg or something, and I see it take them out of action, like I'm back in the gym in 2 days. And, I remember being I dislocated my ankle and I broke my leg in a mountain bike crash in Moab. It took 4 hours to get out. And I was in the gym 2 days later. I was on a recumbent bike. I couldn't pedal fast enough to get it to turn on. And but I'm there, and I'm going to do what it takes to grow from it. And like I said, when we fostered, I would say my marriage took a big nosedive for at least a year and a half. And and we came out stronger than ever after that, because we had to learn how to become a team and be a united front and be each other's advocate, and know that it was a really difficult season. And so it's like I look at my life, and there's been a lot of struggle with dyslexia. Coming to America, I came over with I had 2 backpacks. I'd sold a motorcycle. That was the only money I had in the world. And I didn't go to college. And I remember my father-in-law took me for the walk, and he's like, "So you're going to marry my daughter?" And I was like, "Yep." He says, "So what are you going to do to support my daughter?" I was like, "Sir, I'm going to make $100,000. That was when $100,000 was a lot more than $100,000 today. And he said, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." And I came over to this country. I mowed grass and I moved rocks. I made $8 an hour. And I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I just knew there was a way to make it work here. So quitting my job at the chiropractic office, I spent 6 months interviewing for Tony Robbins. I burnt through every penny I had again. And then I went all in. I said, "I need 30 clients." And he said, "It doesn't work that way. We give you 1. And if you do a good job, we give you 2. And I was like, "Well, that doesn't work for me because I need to make some money." And so I had 30 clients in 30 days. And I called them every single day. I was like, "Send me more clients, send me more clients." So I feel like, just with life, with my mother-in-law passed at a very young age last year. She had a stroke and she had cancer at the same time. And then something I didn't mention is last year I was in bed almost every weekend with horrendous vertigo. I lost most of my hearing in my left ear. If my phone was 20 feet away, it'd probably take me 45 minutes to get to my phone. And so just horrendous vertigo. Doctors said, "Hey, it's Meniere's disease. There's nothing you can do about it. It's only going to get worse." After this, I'm going surfing, which may sound weird in St. George, but they have a surf wave that they've just built. I started wing foiling about a month ago. And last year I couldn't walk without a cane hiking. And so last year was a rough year with my mother-in-law's death, stroke. My wife went back to Colorado for a few months. I had all 4 kids. And I was in bed every single weekend. And so my aha came when I learned to stop pushing and accept help. And my kids had to help me get to the bathroom. My kids had to help me move around the house. And I remember feeling like a complete burden to my kids. I was like, no kid should have to see their dad like this. And my kids are like, "Dad, it's fine." And what hit me, we're watching a movie and it had a parent with dementia, and I burst into tears. And my kid's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I am a burden to you guys." And I said, I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt like I'd failed my family. And my kids are like, "Dad, it's okay." I was like, "No, I'm useless." So last year was a dark year for me. And I just remember coming to the point where I accepted help from my kids. And I don't know what shifted, but I haven't had vertigo this year. And my hearing's come back. I'd have this 24 hours a day intense ringing in my head. And it doesn't sound that bad until you've had it. And then it would be driving me insane. So I've been suffering from that for at least 5 years. And last year I thought I was going to be disabled.
What do they call that? Pulsatile tinnitus? Isn't that what that is?
That, and then the Meniere's disease. And I was like, so they said, hey, eat less than a gram of salt a day, which is not a lot of salt. I did that. And they said, here's Valium, take this when you're having an episode and just to chill you out. But it was mad. And I sort of lost faith in my body. I never knew when it was going to hit. Generally, I'd wake up with it in the middle of the night. So business was not good last year. I wasn't able to work the same way I was able to normally work. My way I dealt with stress was mountain biking and guitar playing. Well, I couldn't hear and I didn't have the balance for mountain biking. And so I had to find lots of different ways of just navigating stress. And income took a hit, all of those things. But what I found is I was able to find joy in all the mess. And I actually went down to Baja to do an off-road trip with some real estate investors. I drove from St. George to southern San Diego, just on the border. Everyone's drinking tequila. And I was like, hey guys, I'm going to go to bed early because I drove the 8 hours and I said, I'm just going to hit the hay. I woke up at midnight, room spinning, and I had to cancel. And I was like, I can't do anything that I enjoy. And the next day, vertigo clears up a bit and I drove back to St. George. So drove there one day, drove back the next day, stayed in a hotel. The next vertigo attack I had the next weekend, I'm smiling ear for ear. And my kids are like, Dad, why are you so happy? I was like, best place in the world to have vertigo is in my bed, in my home with my kids. And I was like, not in a hotel on a border town to Tijuana. I said, this is great. And it changed my outlook. So last year I felt like I was able to experience joy in really hard situations. And that's the difference between happiness. Joy, you can find joy in any circumstance. Happiness is situational. And so I got grateful for having vertigo. I got grateful for income going down because I was like, thank you for letting me know what's important in my life. And I got super grateful seeing how my kids stepped up and helped.
I'm just mind blown that just went away. There's obviously no medicine you're taking. You're just trying to live your life and change your mindset and just try to change yourself.
Yeah, I think shifting more to focusing on the joy dropped my stress a lot because I was pretty stressed every time it happened. And then I was very close with my mother-in-law, and and she lost the ability to speak. She lost the ability to walk. My wife was a former nurse, so she was the best fit to be there with her. And again, my kids stepped up, absolutely amazing. Again, my adopted kids were like godsends. My biological kids, just amazing, amazing job. And unfortunately, I don't know if unfortunately is the right word, but we grow through hard times. And, a lot of times parents, I'm very honest with my kids about hard times. My mother's got some brain tumors right now. They've degenerated her skull and they're actually coming out of her head. But she gets more tests tomorrow. I don't know what it is. So I'm not going to play the game where I'm using my intellect and my imagination to come up with worst case scenarios with my mum. So I call her most days. We have great conversations. I make her laugh. And then, I show her I love her. And if there's a problem, I'll be there. But I'm not going to sit there and imagine it because it may all be benign, And this, it was a good buddy of mine's funeral on Saturday. He died of brain cancer. And I remember going, why am I so worried about things? All my problems are solvable. It's either a psychology or a strategy to solve any business problem or kid challenge, relationship stuff. Like there is some things that are not solvable, but the majority of problems that people have are solvable, but they're not solvable with the intellect and the emotion that they're coming in with. They need to go to a different place to solve it. And joy is one of those great places, gratitude. But it sounds cheesy, but it's hard to do. But it's where the most growth comes out of.
That's so good, man.
Hey, before we get to this last section, Andrew, one thing that I had written on here for a while, and you kind of, and I didn't know if this had tied into it, but you talked about your childhood and the start of that, and and the pains you went through, and the 2 years. Was that where the anger that you talked about earlier came from? Was from that time period and the pain and injury?
Yeah, I think not fitting in socially. I wasn't interested in soccer, and I wasn't interested in certain cultural things. And I felt like back where I came from, it was all about how much beer you could drink, how many women you could be with. It was very hyper masculine. If you guys want to dive into some, I've got on my podcast, it's How to Succeed in Love and Women and Dragons. The audio is not great. I'll be redoing them as probably season 3. But I realized where I grew up was a lot of hyper masculinity, fake masculinity, more boy masculinity, masquerading as men. And so I just didn't feel like I fitted in. I didn't feel like my interests were what most people were interested in. And so I wasn't good at a lot of school. So I just didn't feel like I had much value or worth. And my town, again, it's got, it's quite an angry place. And I learned the way you stay safe is people being scared of you. Because if people are scared of you, they don't bother you, And so I learned to have hyper aggressive responses. And it was so interesting. I got bit on the neck last week at a party.
Oh, yeah.
And punched.
You said the story was odd.
Yeah, and by a very drunk man who I think was on drugs as well. And it was just interesting that anger didn't come out.
Probably that plant fertilizer.
Probably the plant fertilizer. Yeah, it's cheap that way. But I was just like, right. So it was a good reminder of how far I've come. And I think we need those challenges to remind ourselves how far we have come, because there's certain moments in my life that I remember responding to my wife differently, like with peace. And I was like, holy crap, I just behaved the way I've been training. And I did the thing. And I was like, oh, all right, I'm growing. And, so we need those challenges, because it's not how we act, it's how we react. That's what we're after. We're after reacting in the way that we train ourselves rather than the way we've been trained. Does that make sense? Most people have never stopped long enough to dissect their belief systems to work on them. They just think their belief systems are who they are, and they're not. They're just a byproduct of our past.
And if you show that, you're going to earn respect from your wife. You're going to, at that party, I'm sure you get respect from the people around you.
Yeah,
you didn't act right, which has a better result in the end.
But it was a bizarre moment.
Yeah.
But I came out of it going, hey, thanks for letting me know that I've worked through this and I don't have to let ego run the show. And so it's like, these difficult seasons, the anger that I had, I've actually thanked, because it did keep me safe as a kid. It was a great mechanism to keep me safe, but it's not in marriage. Yeah. But I remember my first coach, I would argue with him about me being angry. And he's like, why are you fighting so much to stay in a place that you don't want to stay? And this is a much bigger subject, but, the strongest driving force in people's life is to stay congruent with the identity they believe they have. And so I was trying to fight with my coach to prove that I was angry, even though my goal was to be peaceful. And most people will self-sabotage themselves to stay congruent with their identity. And that's a lot of the deep dives I'll do with people to figure out, is it an identity or is it a behavior? Mm. Have you claimed a behavior as an identity? So again, much bigger subject there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. We'll have you on for a series of podcasts where we can dig into that. But in the interest of getting you out here in time, we really appreciate all the wisdom you've shared with us here. But we have a last section that we call the OT with Owen and Ted, where we've got 5 questions.
Andrew's loving these.
He's making fun of us.
So good. You're like polished and, professional. And
4 years this August.
We have never been accused of being polished before, so I'm not sure.
There you go.
It's about time.
Okay. So this is going to be a fun one, because I'm actually surprised you don't have one yet. But if you were going to write a book, what would it be about, or what would the title be, or both?
Yeah, I think people, like, I asked this on a Zoom today. I was like, who here has an identity? Everybody raised their hand. I was like, define what an identity is. And then the Zoom is silent, because people can't define identity, but it is the strongest driving force in life. So I would do something along how to really understand your identity. And again, you know what I suck at? Coming up with cool names. That's what I suck at. But that's why I have a CMO who comes up with cool names. So I guarantee there'll be a book coming. But it's like how to use pain as purpose, how to really get clear on your goals and how to stay on track with your targets. So I don't know what you'd call that, but, cool, catchy names are not in my forte. But I will pass that over to Brian, who's awesome, by the way. Brian is absolutely phenomenal, and he figures out all of that stuff. So, he will be telling me what my book should be called, and I guarantee there'll be one out, because he's just epic like that.
Well, I was supposed to be on that Zoom call, but we had a Rio last night, and my answer I think would have been, "I'm a connector."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that would have been my response in that Zoom message, and then you would have tore that apart somehow.
Somehow.
Okay, the next one is, it's your podcast, not necessarily the podcast you have, but you can interview anyone in the world today. Doesn't have to be real estate, coaching related. Who is it, preferably live? And what's the one question you would want to ask?
You guys are big questions.
There's a reason we don't send these out ahead of time.
Yeah. One of my favorite guys is a guy called John Eldridge.
John Eldridge.
And he's wrote some phenomenal book. One's called Fathered by God, and the other one's called A Wild at Heart. And he's just got such a great way of putting things. So I'd love to pick his brain. He was like a marriage counselor, and he's got a great quote. He's like, he said, we're moving faster now than the speed of soul. He said, technology moves faster than the speed of soul. And I might be paraphrasing, but he said, we've got a godlike ability to know what's happening in the world without a godlike ability to do anything about it. And he said, and that is torment. And so I think about that, because we can have so much empathy for so many things in the world that are happening. And I'm like, but I don't do anything. I can't do anything about it. There's a tsunami. And I'm like, oh, that's horrible. But, I can send some cash over. But I know about all the things going on. But what it does is it stops me looking at, what can I do today? Do my kids need me? Does my wife need me? Do my clients need? What can I do in my community to make a difference? So I've zeroed in on a lot of childhood trauma through John Eldridge's work. And I even went to a boot camp of his. John wasn't there, but it was run by ex-mafia guys. And it was a phenomenal event. And, so I got so much from that. And they give us 45 minutes of content with 30 minutes to process what they've just covered. And I love that, to have that time. So I think that probably came into my event when I give people 5 hours just to really process the mornings.
Talk about some guys with some past anger right there.
Yeah. Yeah. But they'd grown. Like, these are the guys that, like, hey, I was in witness protection because my dad murdered my mother, when I was a kid, and they came through some trauma, and they've done a lot of John Eldridge's stuff to work through that. So,
wow. There's a lot here, man. Seriously, I could talk to you for hours, but
I gotta admit, it's gone pretty quick. So thank you.
Okay, we're at the end of the road for the Devlin clan here in regard to you. It's at your funeral, and somebody's going to be walking up to the front to tell your life story or talk about you. Who do you think it'll be, and what do you hope they're going to say about you?
Well, I've told my wife I'm going to outlive her because I don't want her to go through the trauma of seeing me die. So I said, I'm going to outlast you, babes. And I said, and then you don't have to bury me. And so it can't be my wife. So I'm going to say my greatest honor would be, and I say this all the time, I'm like, at the end of your life, your story is set. You've done your story, and you're not in charge of what people say about you anymore. And you're not in charge of who says it. And so the greatest honor would be that I think my kids would say, my dad was a little crazy. My dad was an adventurer, and he loved us well. And he loved our mother, and with all his heart. And he did his best to make a difference to people. One of the highlights I have is every year we have African and Indian orphans come and stay with us. And it is mad. I've had 20 kids living at our house, for 5 days. And I got a message from one of those boys called Robert. And he said, he stayed with me for 6 weeks. He said, the closest thing I've ever had to a dad is you.
Wow.
And he said, you'd sit at my bedroom door and play guitar as I fell asleep. And he'll turn 18 at the end of this year. And he said, he found me on Instagram, and so we've been chatting backwards and forwards, but he's going through a hard time over in Northeast India. And I got to be able to speak into his life and mentor him. So it's like, I would hope there would be people along those lines that people would not have any clue, but they'd step forward and just say that I made an impact. And when we got Robert, and there was another boy from Rwanda, they said, well, these boys, we've had some challenges in other homes, and the violent. And I was like, what do you mean the violent? And they said, well, they like to wrestle. I said, because they're boys. And they said, yeah, but they like to wrestle all the time. I said, because they're boys. So they came to my house and I said, right, boys, we got one rule in this house. We don't do anything before we've wrestled. And so we wrestled for probably an hour and a half. We're all dripping with sweat. But it was just, they were awesome kids. And, so I like to show kids what a family is. You know, I actually did a sermon last week. My pastor does not have any time off. He's an awesome guy, but he doesn't take any time off. But he's going on vacation. He's like, "Can you cover for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I guess so." So I covered being a dad on Father's Day, and I said, you know, you don't need DNA to be a dad.
Wow.
You know, it could be a family member, it could be a kid in the street, it could be, you know, kids in the community, or it could be international. But it's like just showing them what a dad is and showing them that they're enough to be loved. You know, so.
Was that one of your more nervous speeches?
Oh, the most nerve-wracking thing I can think of doing.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, this is not just Andrew Devlin's opinion. This has to be like biblically correct. I'm not trained for this, but I'll say yes a lot to things when I do not feel equipped. And that is definitely one of them. So anyway, he got to have a great vacation, and I'm super glad I can help and allow him and his family to get away, and because he does give so much. So he's off. He was actually over my house last night. We had some whiskey together.
Nice.
It was probably about 2 months ago. They had a young 18-year-old do the whole sermon at church, and she killed it. And I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, I don't think I could do that. I mean, I was in shock watching this young lady do it, and kudos to her. So
yeah,
I couldn't imagine it. But hey, next question is: if you look at your life as a whole, and you think about the person that was the most impactful on you, mentor or whatever that person is, who is it? And if you could speak to them directly right now, what would you say?
Yeah, it was actually our woodworking teacher in high school, Mr. Tim, and I skipped school a lot, and I didn't understand what they were talking about, so I'd just go home, and he would see me in the hall, and he'd be like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "I don't know, over the wall." Our school, our walls came in to stop us climbing out. It wasn't trying to keep bad people out; it was trying to keep the kids in, and so I would scale the wall and go home, and he would say, "Hey, do you want to come and teach rock climbing? Hey, do you want to come and do some kayaking?" Because he did the outdoor education program as well. And I'll be like, yeah, sure. So he taught me to ski. He taught me to windsurf. He got me into mountain biking. And I think I would be dead if it wasn't for Mr. Tim. Oh, wow. So unfortunately, he passed. And the irony was he would drive past pretty much my house to go skiing in Colorado. And so I never got to thank him, but I did send a letter to his wife, and I got a letter that was read at his funeral. And one of the teachers stood up. He said, Mr. Tim would always say his favorite part about being a teacher is taking the kids that everybody else had given up on and pouring into them. And they weren't going to read my letter, but when the teacher said this, apparently Mr. Tim's best friend stood up and passed the letter over, and they read that. But I would love to have told him how far I'd come. And again, I sucked at woodwork. And so it wasn't like he's like, oh, this kid's great at woodwork. But he would spend his free time. We would ski on a dry ski slope. I'd encourage you to Google that if you don't know what that is. But he'd take me up to Scotland to ski and over to Italy. And so he really took me under his wing. And I'm eternally grateful for a teacher that could, see maybe a diamond in the rough and pour into him.
Man, I got watery-eyed on that one.
I did too. It's the lights in here.
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay. Well, it's a shame we have to wrap this up, Andrew, but what's the best way for people to follow you, reach out to you? How do you like to be connected with?
Yeah, the new website, Andrew Devlin, DEVLIN.com, is all pretty much up and running. They've just been testing all the texts and emails and all of that. And then Andrew at AndrewDevlin.com is my email. So you can find me on Instagram. And then, as I said, the podcast, Love Plus Money, all words. That might change, but we'll see. So those probably the best ways to reach out. Send me a direct message on social if you want to. And we've got one-on-one coaching, masterminds and group coaching. And then there will be courses coming out where we'll be diving into like masculinity, femininity, marriage, kids, business, setting goals, like all of those things coming. And I'm actually recording videos tomorrow for a mini series. So that should be up on the website real soon.
Does it have anything to do with the Avengers? Because you look like you could be Tony Stark's body double.
Yeah, so it does not. But funny story.
How many times have you been told that? Like, it has to be a lot.
I got told yesterday. So there's a guy, I'm in the gym. There's a girl taking forever on the calf raise machine. Me and my son work out. He's 15 and is one of the highlights every week for me working out with my son. And he's going to be a lot bigger than me as well. He's so it's fun watching him find a passion of lifting weights. But we're there. I'm on the elliptical waiting for this girl to do, she must have been on the calf raise machine for 15 minutes, but there's a personal trainer and he keeps on looking at me and talking to his client. And he keeps on looking at me and I'm like, he's going to say something about Tony Stark. And as I'm leaving the gym, he runs up and he's like, hey, has anybody ever told you look just like the actor? I was like, Pee Wee Herman? And he went, no, Tony Stark. And I look like Iron Man. And I was like, yeah, I've heard that before. And then I was at a party in California last week, and there's a guy who places football players in colleges, you know, and he runs up to me and he said, Tony Stark. And I was like, pleased to meet you. I said, how you doing, Tony? And he went, not me, you. And I was like, no, my name's not Tony. So anyway, I take the glasses off. I still get it. I've had
you still do.
No beard, you know. And so it's one of those things that at this point in my life, I'm like, okay, yes. But then I was like, well, if he's going to look like somebody, it might as well be Iron Man, you know?
Right.
So I'm all right with that. So yes.
Take the compliment.
Yeah.
Hey, before we wrap, I have to ask, do you have any real estate investing you do?
Not much. So on the lower scale of things. So what I found is, and I went through a lot of real estate courses, but I thought, you know what I'm really good at is what I do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So more so I'm not managing anything. I've done some investments, but I'm not managing anything. But I was like, so I'll generally have people that I work with and like, hey, we're going in on this. Do you want to come in? And then, I look through the numbers and I like working with people I trust.
Yeah.
But I was probably April of last year. I did a lot of like real estate seminars and, storage units and all of that stuff. And I went, is it my season? And I thought, it's not my season right now. What my season is to scale my coaching. Because, a lot of times success is more focused on less things.
Yep.
And I was like, right, for this season. So my goal would be scaling business even more from a coaching, speaking, I do live events as well. And then stepping into the real estate on a much higher level. And I really want to do it with my kids. That would be the goal, and helping my kids get on it. Because let's face it, the prices right now for homes are, unless you've got a real estate plan, my concern is for my kids being able to afford to live in a home.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was like, right, let's start them on that journey as well. So that will be coming.
Yeah. Super cool.
Well, guys, if you listen to us the first time or the 227th time, please give us a review. Tell us what you think about Andrew and support him. Check him out. He's got some great content out there. Also, he personally sent me a podcast that him and his wife did on love plus money. It was season 2. I think it was episode 9 and 10, your part 1, part 2.
Yeah.
Great conversation about working with your spouse and just kind of how that goes back and forth. And, that was a conversation in one of the group calls. But there's just so much great content out there about just love and money. How do you talk to your wife? How do you talk to your husband? And then a little bit deep dive into how women's biology is different than the men's biology. And I think your wife started talking about cycles, and there's times when you talk, and that might have been one of the other episodes I'm mixing in, but just great content down there. And it's just things that aren't talked about a lot in our community. But Andrew, thank you so much. You've been an inspiration to me. I've really, really enjoyed your content, the coaching you put out there. It's changed me. It's impacted me. And I can't thank you enough. And I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to get to know you better. So thank you for that, man.
Oh, guys, you are phenomenal. You guys are super, super legit. So I appreciate the great thought-provoking questions. And yeah, this has been super enjoyable.
He made it easy on us, didn't he?
Yeah, this was all you, man. We just asked a few questions and you stole the show, which is how it should be.
I'm good at talking. That's what I've learned about things that I'm interested in. My wife says, she was like, I thought you were like more of an introvert, but she goes, you're not. She goes, you just love being around people that give you peace. And I was like, yeah. And so if I'm talking about something important, quite happy to chat all day. But I don't want to make polite chit chat ever. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And I think people are getting a lot out of it. So definitely check out you and your site. But with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of RIA Radio, the absent Aiden Bear, and Ted Kosh, I'm Owen Dashner. You've been listening to Andrew, turning trauma into triumph, Devlin.
Sign off.
Ted's gonna hop in here too. We're without a producer today, so he's pretending like he knows how to do the technology.
He's pressing buttons.
You know what I'm doing. Come on.
Yeah, he's over there like this with a monkey on a keyboard. So Ted will do the intro here, and then we'll just jump right in. And I do a lot of the question asking. Ted is just here because he looks better on camera than I do.
Eye candy.
Yeah.
I'm the back end, and I am the co-host.
Yeah.